I wrote this paper a while ago about these native vines and their role in our lives today, and why it actually brought me to the passion of becoming a winemaker slash grape grower, viticulturalist, all of the things. Um, when I was about 9 years old, we got this property in the middle of nowhere at the time, and it felt like I was pretty much away from everything. Um, but in staying out there, we found beautiful foliage and awesome butterflies and birds and everything. And so we wanted to expand on that. And my my mom was really into wine at the time, so she wanted to go check out the wineries that were in Fredericksburg. And she was disappointed with all of them. They didn't have that kind of flavor palette that she was looking for. And so my my mom's friend decided to pretty much dare her into starting her own vineyard. Um, and we did, because why back down from that kind of dare? So it took us about 2 years to clear out the property, just for the space of about 4 acres. And we had 14 rows at 200 feet long and decided to do a process of elimination. So we bought all of these vines and planted them all, Sauvignon Blanc, Cabernet, a Muscat, and a Chenin Blanc. And the only thing that survived was Sauvignon Blanc. Couldn't understand why. After 4 years of just letting them grow, and finally becoming established to produce a wine out of it, none of them survived except for Sauvignon Blanc. Come to find out, it was the rootstock that was on it. It needed that certain soil, whereas all the other ones couldn't handle that kind of soil. So it was like, okay, well, that's going to be our number one star. And in 2015, we went from growing grapes and selling them to the local winemakers in Fredericksburg and Comfort, and actually producing our own. So we have a 2016 Sauvignon Blanc that is beautiful and soft and just refreshing enough to be nice and crisp on the end, but not overbearing. And it doesn't have that tart finish, and I love it very much. And since then, we just kept going. Well, times have changed, and our terroir is not the same. Our elevation hasn't really changed either, but our our landscape is definitely more eroded than it used to be. So trying to find proper vines was difficult. So we had to settle for going to a Spanish route. And so we got Tempranillo and Tannat and a white Tannat, or excuse me, a white Tempranillo called Malvasia Blanca. Beautiful, very lush, gorgeous green grapes when they're not ripe, but then they chandelier down and they're just big purple babies. Gorgeous. Want to eat them off the vine. Um, and that ended up being our new section for expanding our vineyard. And so the crazy thing is that the Sauvignon Blanc versus the Tempranillo and the Tannat up front, they were different elevations by like 25 feet. And I never thought that would be such a big deal either. But up front couldn't handle Sauvignon Blanc, and back front couldn't handle Tempranillo. So it was like, okay, got to figure out the lay of the land, right? So today I wanted to talk about the Texas native grapevines, and the deep-rooted history that they have with actually producing the wines that we have today, and how they actually pretty much brought together a nation in order to make this world unified, I feel. And it's a really awesome story. So bear with me because I wrote this a while back. I did consolidate it, so it's not 16 pages like it was. um, but I'm going to start from the beginning. And for 135 years, the Texas rootstock has been supporting European grapevines for just over 135 years. Surprisingly, our grapevines have been have been used much earlier on, before the first settlers came to claim the Texas land in 1680. The history of viticulture in Texas actually spans over 3 centuries, and it predates California grown wine. Thank you. The indigenous people were the first to take advantage of these wild grapes for multiple uses, such as food sources, medicine, trade goods, and fermented drinks. And the vines would also be used for turning it into cordage and basket weaving materials. The Spanish missionaries had settled to establish themselves along the Rio Grande Valley and created one of the very first wineries, or at least one of the very first vineyards. Coming from wine-producing regions, they had brought with them a European grapevine known as Vitis vinifera, or vinifera, if you prefer, and established the first vineyard in North America near El Paso River Valley. The black Spanish varietal was used to produce their sacramental wines and other products. However, the European vines they planted had an extremely hard time adapting to the hot, humid climates of Texas and faced several challenges from native pests and diseases. Being a different species from the Texas wild grapes, these imported vines were highly susceptible to local threats, often resulting in their decline and death. Taking note from the native people and their use in the native grown grapes, the missionaries demonstrated considerable interest in the local grape varieties and their viticultural processes. As European vines struggled to survive, settlers increasingly relied on native grapevines like Mustang Genesis and Rotundifolia. I can never say that properly. The Muscadine grape and the Mustang grape. We will go into that a little bit later. So these native varieties proved more resilient and better suited for the Texas environment and were hardy in heat, drought, and pest, and abundant along rivers, woodlands, and fermented into rustic wines by both indigenous groups and early European settlers. Let's see if I can do this right. I'm working on it. If I could figure out how to do that. From the beginning, here we go. Okay.
And I think maybe tab advances,
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Hmm?
I'm not a big.
Oh, it's all good. I can tap. We're good. Thank you. I'm not much for computers either. So, okay. So this is actually a photo of one of my grapevines that I've cultivated. It's a Sauvignon Blanc, one of the very first that we produced. I've had that photo for about 15 years now, but I just like the way the light shines through the leaves. Beautiful. Anyway. So these native varieties proved more resilient and better suited in the Texas environment. They were hardy in heat, drought, and pest abundant. And I've already said that. So the reliability of them made them very essential for survival and daily life in the early Texas times. Oh, am I on the right spot? Here we go. So the Mustang Genesis, this is one of three I'm actually going to show you guys today. I really enjoy this one. This one's actually all over the riversides of where I like to go fishing. Historically used for wine, jelly, and pies by the settlers, the area of this growth covers parts of central North and East Texas. These vigorous climbing, long-running vines grow along rivers, creeks, and roadways, and the grapes are small, dark-skinned, and are found in bunches from 3 to 12 grapes. It's hardy. Old vines have been found for more than 50 feet long and by a foot in diameter. I actually have a picture of that. I took that a couple days ago at a friend's place. He hasn't touched his property in about 20 years, and this vine was just sitting on the fence line, as you can see, breaking it. And I love it. Compared to my arm, it was like the size of my thigh. It was crazy.
So,
Yes.
I've done on my property, but I've never seen any grapes. Have I bird get into them before I see them, or is there?
So usually when it comes to vines in general, especially the native ones that are here, they are very fickle when they grow. So they kind of need to be pruned back in order to have new growth, because green growth causes fresh grapes. If you have a brown stalk on any kind of grapevine, it is not going to grow a grape. It might grow a little sapling and it'll grow an arm, but off of that arm will become the grape. So as long as you have green arms, you'll have fresh grapes. Yeah, something I learned a long time ago, and I was wondering why they were never working. But yeah, if you have wild grapes growing in your backyard and you just think they're like a big gnarly mess, find out where they're originating from, right? And then cut your bush or however height you want to, and then just let it go and watch the green grow and watch the grapes pop. Really fun. Am I on the right side? How do I go back?
Arrow. Are you using the arrows to advance?
I have no idea. Oh, this guy. Yay, you're amazing. Thank you. Okay. So the other one is the Vitis berlenderi. It's the winter grape. This vine was actually the #1 vine that saved France and their disease problems. So back in, I want to say 1860 as well, 1870, a bug, a louse called Phylloxera came to Europe. It actually was shipped over from Texas or from the Americas and was shipped over into Europe, and it got into the roots of all of those European vines because the vinifera, excuse me, can't handle that kind of bug, but our rootstock was totally fine with it. We're used to that stuff. And so it was detrimental, actually. Let's see. The destruction started in Britain, quickly spread across Europe, severely impacting the French economy. And in 1863, vines in the South Rhone region of France became mysteriously dead and faced ruin as entire vineyards were destroyed in a matter of years. With the cause remaining a mystery for some time, the French Minister of Agriculture and Commerce even offered a bounty equivalent to what would be like $1 million today just to figure out a viable cure. The breakthrough actually came when a viticulturalist known as T.V. Munson, or Thomas Volney Munson, he was passionate about grapevines and was well known, helped the French discover a solution for this plague and save the European wine industry from disaster. A little bit of background about this gentleman. Yeah. He was a distinguished botanist, nurseryman, viticulturalist, and he dedicated his life to grape cultivating. Began during his studies in Kentucky. He developed a profound interest in experimenting with grape varieties to aspire. The idea is to supply every use and every season with the most beautiful, most wholesome, nutritious, and most profitable food. That's his direct quote. And in 76, he decided to relocate to Denison, Texas. And in a matter of a week in Denison, he found 8 wild native vines that have never been experienced or ever seen before. And from that, it struck a chord in him, and he decided to travel all over Texas. He went to New Mexico, he went to the Indian territories where you really weren't supposed to go. And all over throughout Texas, just collecting all of these vines. And in that process, he actually collected over 300 different vines. That's why they're not in here. There's way too many. But the best one that he did get was the Vitis berlenderi. By grafting European grapevines onto native Texas roots, Munson found the solution for the Phylloxera crisis. During this time, early evaluations indicated that rootstocks such as Vitis rapinia were abundant, but they weren't enough. And with the discovery of the berlenderi found in Texas, limestone soils, although hard to propagate, is suited to chalky soil and is resistant to this Phylloxera and can thrive in similar conditions as the French vineyards can. Although Thomas is more famous for utilizing the berlenderi to save the French industry, Texas native grapes, including the Volpina and the Ripara, as well as the Mustang Genesis, were crucial in breeding programs in the Denison, Texas area to develop hybrids that were also resistant to other pests and other diseases. And in that result, 135 years of iconic French grapes are still continuing to thrive on the descended Texas rootstocks today. So you might ask yourself, what is a rootstock? I like to think of a rootstock and the soil and everything down below as like a kind of not a silent partner because they're loud if you don't do it right. You know, they'll tell you. But as another helping hand in the vineyard, because without them and without their drive to actually uptake nutrients and uptake water, that vine would never survive, right? And then where would I be without a job? So, rootstock play a much larger role than most people think. Their influence extends beyond simply supporting the vines. They have a significant impact on vital aspects of grape growing, the vine vigor and health. Like the choices of rootstock determines how vigorously a vine grows and how healthy it remains over time. The drought tolerance and disease resistance. The rootstock selected for their ability to withstand drought and resistance, common vineyards disease, ensuring the longevity and the sustainability of this vine. The ripening seed and the fruit quality, it all influences how quickly grapes ripen and the overall quality of the harvest and the sustainability in challenging climates. So, like I said, our vines needed a good rootstock, and our Sauvignon Blanc is a different rootstock than our Tempranillo. So, of course, it needed to be a little hardier and withstand a little bit more. So you have to change it up to where you are, It does, and I will get into that. You're reading my mind. Okay, let's see here. Old vines develop expansive root systems that reach deep into the soil, enabling them to access water and nutrients that younger vines cannot. This deep rooting not only assists the vines during dry periods, but also allows grapes to draw from a broader range of minerals, adding complexity and terroir specific characteristics to the wine. Now, when I say terroir specific, I mean not just where you are, the climate, the sun, the water, you know, how much you're feeding it, the fertilizers, but what's in your soil. Like you might have this much topsoil, but then you have this much caliche, and then you have this much sandy loam underneath it, and it's growing down into that sandy loam. It's going to have more flavor palette of the sand and the loam and that grit than it will of the limestone and the high acid. Okay. So the deeper your roots, the richer the soil, you know, that kind of situation. Let's see. With decades to adapt, old vines can better withstand environmental stressors, whether it be hot, humid summers or unexpected droughts. Their established root systems make them naturally resilient because old vines depend less on surface water and nutrients. They're most influenced on the deeper subsoil layers. So Munson's contributions included all of this knowledge, and he decided to graft and take cuttings and send them over to France, grafted to those native rootstocks. And each region was obviously a different kind of soil, just like my little 20-acre plot. And with that, each region got a different kind of rootstock attached to maybe a similar vine. But it definitely helped all over. He actually bred over 300 grape varieties adapted to Texas and the Midwest, with most intended for table use and juice, but some suitable for winemaking. After that, he funded a nursery, and Munson was actually documenting the wild grape species in the regions, traveled 75,000 miles. That's how far he went, all over the place. 75,000 miles foot travel and on a horse, just collecting vines. God love him. There is actually a memorial vineyard, the Munson Memorial Vineyard at Grayson College preserves 65 of the 300 grape varieties he had developed. Unfortunately, with the rest of them lost to history. Every year, Grayson College actually gets vineyards all over the world requesting for the Munson cuttings. So I think that's kind of a fun way that Munson actually brings a nation together no matter what the AVA is. AVA, I should go into that. So Texas has 8 recognized American viticultural areas, or AVAs, each identified as its unique geography, excuse me, can't read, identified by its unique geography rather than its production size. So for example, there's one spot, I think I have a photo. There's one spot right here near Fort Stockton, itty bitty. It has one vineyard. That's it, just one. And then this one here, this is the hill country, our beautiful Texas hill country. I'm about right there. And that has over 100,000 acres worth of vines, like vineyard acres. And so it's insane. The first vineyard that was ever established was over here in El Paso. They are still around. They actually survived the prohibition and all of that fun stuff. And they are called Velvetti wineries. They've been 180 years open, and they're pretty awesome. Still working those Black Spanish from Europe. And that's soon to be, hopefully, 2 more AVAs added onto our Texas areas. And I'm hoping that'll also be something around this area and possibly somewhere over here. But I'm super excited. Every single region is very different. And what I love about Fort Davis and Stockton and El Paso is that these have a lot of mountain range to them. So you would never think that vines would actually grow there, but they're one of the best. I would pick that over a cab from California any day. Definitely. So AVA is just basically we in the wine industry, we are very, very big into where's your AVA, but with the just regular consumer, they just want to make sure that it's 100% Texas. And the only way that is approved, like for sure that it is 100% Texas, is if you are in one of the AVAs. Now I'm hoping that will change because we'll have 2 more added. But I'm sorry, I lost my spot.
Where are the 2 that are gonna, the 2 that are to be added?
Oh, it was a debate. There was one that was just below Denison, just north of Dallas. I can't remember the town. I'm so sorry. And then there was supposed to be one off over in this area near like Beaumont. But I'm not really sure the names. I'll have to double check that. In College Station? Not that I'm aware of, no. But it doesn't mean there aren't vineyards, They're just not discovered yet. Yeah. We might be down in the hill country area, our vineyard, but we are still extremely small. My mom and I produce maybe 1,000 cases per varietal, and we only have about 4 varietals. And so we don't produce that much. But because we're so small, we're not as known as all the other ones in Fredericksburg and stuff like that. Yes, ma'am.
What's going on in Fredericksburg that separates it from the rest of Hill Country?
Fredericksburg and Gillespie County and High and everything, they have their own specific ABA. So think of it like in Sonoma and Napa in California, they have these huge sections of growing, and then they have a smaller section of growing. And this was like estate vines versus commercial, things like that. Okay, so as grapevines age, their growth rate slows down, resulting in smaller yields. However, the fruit they produce is often higher in concentration of flavors and aromas. And these older berries typically contain more intense sugars, acids, and phenolic compounds, contributing to wines with greater depth and complexity. Although every vineyard and grape variety is unique, wines from old vines are commonly described as more concentrated in fruit flavor, silky in texture, with fine, intriguing tannins, and complex integrated aromas and a long, lingering finish. We're just going to go back to where you can read some stuff. Mm-mm-mm. Okay. When discussing wine characters, attention often focuses on the vine's fruit, the sun, and the weather, yet much of the essential work occurs underground. This ongoing nutrient cycle supporting strong, balanced growth, making vines more resilient through the growing season. And the microbes also affect soil structure and water management, which is critical for grape development. Properly timed water stress can yield red grape varieties with distinct qualities. Microbes are responsible for breaking down organic matter, thereby producing nutrients that strengthen the vines, and the structure of the soil affects the retention, influencing the concentration and complexity of the grapes. Indigenous yeast and bacteria migrate from the soil and grape skins, shaping the fermentation process. Recent research highlights that the soil's microbiome directly influences the flavors developing inside the grapes. The microorganisms create aroma precursors and natural compounds that shape the character of the fruit, and the nitrogen levels, largely controlled by these microbes, also affect the bright fruity notes commonly found in white and lighter red wines. The influence of these microbes stretches past the vineyard. The yeast and bacteria from the soil end up on the skins, taking part in the fermentation and shaping the wine's unique profile. So if somebody decides that they want to harvest some muscadine grapes and go make their own wine, have at it, baby. You got yeast on those grapes and it is ready to go. But if you don't want it to have a little wang, because wild yeast can be a little, bitter, um, pick up some wine yeast from your local supply store at the Homebrew Supply. I usually get mine from Austin. And with that, it'll actually produce a softer, sweeter palate than that wang on the end that most muscadines are accustomed to. Um, by reducing, though, excuse me, by reducing the chemical issues, increasing organic matter, and applying compost, vineyards nurture these underground communities. This leads to healthier vines, more flavorful fruit, and wines that genuinely express their terroir. Ultimately, living soil not only keeps the vines thriving, but also weaves a story in every bottle. For those of you that have actually tried wine, the important thing to remember about the flavor palette, if you taste vanilla or apples or mint, cherry, they're not additives. None of those are additives into the wines. Those are actual notes that arise naturally from the grape variety and, and their growing environment and the method of aging that the winemaker took, whether it was oak or stainless steel or a cement vat, any kind of minerality that the little flavor palette that just arises on your tongue normally is straight up from the terroir and the vine and the roots and the grape, which is why I love growing so much, because you get to appreciate every single wine bottle more, you know? And I'm not much of a drinker, but I appreciate when I do. Mm. Let's see. But the above ground and underground environments shape the wine chemistry, producing recognizable flavors. Texas wines are shaped by a diverse range of factors, from unique geography of the AVAs to the age of the grapevines and the vibrant microbial activity within the soils. Both above ground and underground influence contribute to the complexity, depth, and distinctive character found in each bottle. Understanding these elements not only enhances appreciation for Texas, but also underscores the importance of sustainable practice and authentic labeling. Together, these factors ensure that Texas wine continue to offer a genuine expression to the terroir, the rich story, and our home and our backyard. So that is all I have for that. If you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them. Yes.
So there's other types of wild grapes besides the Mustang and Muscadine that grow in Texas?
Correct. Yes. There's honestly too many that I can think of. In our backyard right now where we are, there's probably about 3. But in Texas in general, there's, I want to say about 25 to 27 that are actual wild varietals that I know of. And I could be wrong on that number, to be honest. Yes, ma'am.
Kind of building on his question, I've discovered that I have, on my property, it's called Sweet Mountain Grape.
Sweet
Vitis
mountain grape.
lenticola. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all, or if you know anything about it.
Small berries.
That's what Google says.
Okay.
Berries. It says it's a climbing vine, it's an Edwards Plateau,
Mhm.
grape.
That one actually should be coming up actually pretty soon in spring. As soon as May comes around before the rains hit, it should be popping up a lot. So look for the look for little yellow and white flowers.
So I need to cut it back.
Yes. Yes.
Because I have a second one that popped up, I'm guessing thanks to birds.
Yay. Yeah.
Anyway, I just finally got it.
Yeah, definitely cut it back. You could definitely make some jams out of that for sure. Yes, sir.
Well, I have two questions, but that was
one.
What was your other one?
Do most of the wineries, let's say in Fredericksburg area, are they using native wood stocks for all their European,
Yes.
wines that they produce?
Yes, every single cultivated grapevine now is going to automatically be grafted to a native rootstock. Automatically. Like so in the wine industry and in the viticultural scenes, from what I gather, especially I do it, I know I do it, is I like to pick and choose and dabble in between. Not every vine is the same, so why not try something new? And so we've actually gone through at least 4 different cycles of vines, 4 different varietals of vines, and just to see what would last and what wouldn't. And some of them worked really well, and some of them don't. But everybody, no matter what, even Europe, is all grafted to a native Texas vine. Yeah, I love that. We're very popular.
So they basically say the root of wine, Texas.
We are Texas. Yes, it is Texas grown, right? But maybe not grown there. But thank you so much for having me again. If you have any other questions, you come up after and we'll talk about it. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, there was a question on.
Oh, the what?
Where do you get your wine?
Where do we get our vines? We actually get ours from Neil Newsom in the Texas High Plains. My mom has a lock and key under the other ones that we got from California. I'm assuming she did not like those. But Neil Newsom in the High Plains, if we don't get vines from them to replant, then we actually will buy grapes from them, buy fruit from them, and then we'll produce it down here in our area. We try to keep it 100% Texas no matter what we do, whether if we're putting our own Tempranillo or Sauvignon Blanc into it, or if we're buying strictly from somewhere local, but we try to keep it as local as possible. Yes, sir.
You do your own grafting?
Do I do my own grafting? I've tried it and it is not easy. Not at all. Firstly, I had to find cuttings, and it's kind of hard to do that because mom doesn't like it when you dig up her vines. Like, what's wrong with her? So I actually had to take hard cuttings when they were dormant and try to root them myself. Put them in little tiny dark bottles, fill it up with water, and let the stalk just hit just above so it stresses itself and forces roots down. But you have to keep it in the dark. So I had to keep it in the dark for like 6 weeks. Just so the roots that I needed would grow. And then I would plant that, let it get established, and then attach another vine. I had one that survived until we had a freeze. Unfortunately, that's how it goes. But I learned a lot from it. And now I know, get something bigger than your thumb, preferably wrist size. if you can. But be patient and get a lot of rooting powder and a nice dark room and just love the process, you know. If you ever want to try it, I'd be more than happy to help you out. We'll get together. You guys too.
Have you ever planted? We have grapevines, quite a few places in our property.
Mhm.
And sometimes when they're not, we'll try to transplant them, we've never been successful.
Like a second transplant? Like you planted them once and now you're replanting?
Like they're wild on my property and I go out and pick them up.
Oh, yes. No, if the native is growing in a certain spot, it will pretty much grow in that spot and doesn't like any other spot. If it did, it would be growing there mainly because the birds and the foxes and the raccoons, every single animal and wildlife love grapes. And so they will eat them till their heart's content and then, you know, fertilize everywhere. And that's awesome, but they'll only thrive in the conditions they want to be in. Yes, ma'am.
Notice on your picture, you have the cup leaf on the Mustang grape, but you also have a lobed leaf picture.
No, stuff outside.
This guy?
Right there. Are those both Mustang grape?
They are. One is a female, one's a male. Yes. I believe the cupped one is female and the oval one is male. But I also believe that these are two different species. Like same Mustang, because there's actually about 50 or so different varietals of Mustang, you know, subspecies of it. Yeah. So it's they're like insects. They just reproduce everything. And hybrids upon hybrids, when Munson actually created that nursery, all of those cuttings that he had established, he had grafted and hybridized to themselves. So it wasn't just the vinifera and the Berlandetti. It was both of them mixed together, and here's your new one. You know what I mean? Like, for example, Cabernet Franc. It is a beautiful varietal, hardy red. It's actually the father of Cabernet Sauvignon. And then you have Sauvignon Blanc, the mother of Cabernet Sauvignon. When you blend them hybridized wise, not just mixed wines, you know, but when you cross those two plants together and you turn them into one plant, it becomes the Cabernet Sauvignon. So not all vine is created equal because some of those vines are grandparents or great descendants to the other one over here. Tannat, for example, is a French varietal, but it was needed in Spain. So they sent it over to Spain, had a good rootstock on it and everything. And over centuries, you know, the Spaniards weren't going to admit that they have a French vine in their soils, right? So they started calling it Tempranillo. And so the Tannat is the descendant, like the Tempranillo is the baby of the Tannat vine, and they're all just intermingled together. So I think there's so much opportunity to grow in this area, especially with grapevines, if you pardon the pun. But there's so many different varietals that you can never really get bored. Never really get bored.
So are male and female on separate vines or on the same vine?
Some of them can be on the same vine. If they have good fertilizations, cross-pollination is easy for them. Some of them need the male more than the female side. A lot of them will be, what is the word? Oh my gosh, I can't think of the word. Hermaphrodites? Yes, hermaphrodites. And they can self-pollinate themselves, but it's kind of rare to find it like that. And if it is like that, usually it's because they've gone under some kind of hybridization earlier on when they were grafting.
So I'm gonna presume here that the males are only a pollinator and it's the female that fruits?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes,
No fruit on the males.
Correct.
It's a non-hermatic.
correct.
So Dick, that's why yours in the end is.
You can have a whole bunch of vines and no fruit because they're all a bunch of bullets.
Like lemons, a lemon tree, for example, if you don't help it pollinate, itself, it'll never grow fruit, right? Because it needs to have another tree. Sometimes, I mean, they tell me that I have to have 3 to 4 fruit trees of the same species right next to each other in order for them to cross pollinate with each other, and then they can produce fruit. Never thought that was a thing until my fiance's got this beautiful lemon tree at the house, and it hasn't produced fruit in like 3 years. And then I went with a little paintbrush and I was just playing with the flowers, knowing what I was doing, luckily. And now we have little tiny lemon buds ready to go. So, they just need a little love, a little help.
Little sex, therapist.
Exactly. Yeah. I do what I can. Anyone else?
So are you saying that Tempranillo is Texas rootstock also?
Yes. Absolutely. Every single vine. Any vine you will come across that's cultivated. If it is, if it's been dug a hole and put into the ground and they're trying to make jams, jellies, or wine or something out of it, it has hit a Texas rootstock, no matter what. Now, if you're lucky, if you can get some really awesome wild grapes off of a native rootstock with the native vines and the native grapes, and that's when you hit the jackpot. So,
Yeah.
It's Having the deer and the.
oh yeah,
And they're
they're so tall.
There were, wow,
Mm-hmm.
very old Mustang and Muscadine. They would be in the oak trees,
Oh yes.
40, 50 feet up into the trees. Big, I mean, yeah,
Oh
they're
yeah.
huge.
They're awesome.
And
I love it.
they're all up that dirt road.
They look super invasive. A lot of people think that they look really ugly, which is why they get torn down half of the time in like suburban areas. "Oh, I don't like this vine. It hasn't grown a leaf in decades." Well, yeah, you got to cut it back, lady. Hello. It's a plant. What do you expect? Yes,
A
ma'am.
lot of wine off those.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yes, ma'am.
Mustang, Muscadine, they had a lot of wine off.
Going off of that, that's time to trim the native grapes.
Best time to trim. Actually right now, before spring hits, I would cut back all of those native vines while they're still dormant and they're not flowing so crazy. What else? And so let me see if I can get this back here. Okay. Can we turn the light off a little bit more?
It's the only one that's up over there.
Okay, I'll be in the spot.
It'll be a lot.
So as you can see the vine here, right? Each little section has 2 nodes. One node usually has a bulb cane that'll grow, and then the other one has a node that grows the shoot that brings out with vigor. And here on the next 2 nodes of this vine right here is where your grapes will grow. And that's only where they will grow. So when you're cutting, this is the actual like stalk, right? And then this is the little cutoff. This is going to be my future big arm that's going to produce a bunch of grapes. So I wanted to keep him long and make sure he grabs onto the trellis at the top, which is maybe like 2 or 3 feet off the ground. So when I'm pruning, say for example, it is big and open, I would cut little tops off of each one and just maybe like an inch above the node. And where you cut is where you're going to end up getting a bunch of extra plumage. You're going to have a shoot, like a what they call them, fingers worth, a man's fingers worth of clustered vines on the end. And that is great. That shows you that it has a lot of vigor and that it's going to grow really, really fast. But that also can cause problems because all right here is where your grape clusters are going to be. So you have to thin it out. So when they're really close together, I cut every other one. I'll see which one has the strongest arm, and then I'll take away the other one, right? Always leave 2 vines if you want to have a tall kind of broad arm spectrum like this. And if you're a person like me that doesn't like antlers are a little cut off. Say I cut this down and it leaves a little spur, it'll grow another shoot this way, and that's considered an antler. And so when I cut this off for next year, it's going to keep that little spur, and then it's going to grow another shoot. Over time, that's a good way to do it, but over time, that will cause galls on the side of your stems and the side of your stalk. So it'll also entice boreworms and wood beetles to come in and take over. And like the phylloxera, they will go through the root up, and they won't tell you they're there until your vine's already dead. We actually had to rip out at least 500 vines because of that problem. That was one of our issues. Yeah. Good times. But I mean, it's still a really awesome adventure to be a part of. I wouldn't I wouldn't wish it on anybody. Somebody came up to me the other day and was like, what would you tell me if I wanted to start a vineyard tomorrow? Don't. For the love of God, save yourself. Just invest in somebody else who's already got that dream going, and ride those coattails. It is expensive as all get out, but it is worth every bit of time and energy. And I could not be happier in my life doing this. I have not had much education when it comes to being in the viticultural mindset by any means. I've actually read all of the information I'm telling you right now, pretty much since I was about 15. Because when we started this when I was 9, I didn't really care. I just wanted to help my mom because I didn't want her to break her back every day by herself. And over time, that just became more and more self-fulfilling, and then I had more appreciation for those vines. And then it was like, oh, I'm at school in Corpus. I am itching to get in those vineyards. I need that vine soil in my fingers. And I wouldn't change it for anything at all.
So is it mostly just you and your mom and occasional help sometimes?
Yes, sir. The wine club members that are a part of our company, they come out and they volunteer and they help us harvest. They'll help us prune. They'll help us put soil down or put the nets on when the birds are a little too crazy and we're just so close to pruning or harvesting. But we can't afford to pay them. I barely afford to pay myself. Pretty much just doing it out of love for the industry, love for the vines, love for the grapes, the appreciation of it, And I think that's why we have such a good following. We've got about 87 members, and they are pretty much extended family, and I couldn't love them more. They're really awesome. They help when we need it, and we help them when they need it. And it's the family I never even knew I needed, So it's good. I enjoy it. But yeah, it is just me and my mom pretty much every day out there. I'm building an event space right now in the midst of all of the vines where we are having live music and food and our tasting room, but outdoors at our space. And I'm really excited about it because it is a lot of work and still self-fulfilling. I dig it. I guess I'm a glutton for punishment. I don't know, but I love hard labor. And this is definitely a hard labor of love, but worth every penny.
How did your vines fare in the cold snap we had?
This is actually one of our photos. This is from 2021. All of our Sauvignon Blanc. I think these 5 survived, but everybody else died. That was fun. Yeah, we weren't prepared for that one, and that was the first time we ever encountered something like that, to that extent. So no, they didn't last, unfortunately. But mom already knew that somehow. She had like a woman's intuition thing, and had purchased vines last year. So we have them for this year. So we're planting new ones. The Malvasia Blanca, we have some planted already. We're actually getting some more in. I'm really excited to see what that one's going to taste like. I think they say it's a white Tempranillo, so I think it's going to be really fruit forward, but nice and soft, a little buttery, maybe not as buttery as Chardonnays can be with that oak, because we don't do oak. We like stainless steel. So I'm excited. I think it'll be nice and clean. Yes, ma'am.
How long, when you plant a new vine to a harvest that you can use?
4 to 5 years. Yes. When we started it in 2000, that was the first time we planted, and we planted all 4 acres and had no idea what we were really doing, just reading, the lesson plans as you go kind of situation. And didn't realize that it would take that long. And so for the first 4 to 5 years, we were like, what are we going to do for our agricultural tax break? Like, this is a lot of money, and it was hard. But we came up with the idea of just making vinegar out of those grapes. So we harvested like we would making wine and crushed them down like we would making wine, added some mother to it, added a flavor palette. I used raspberry, mom did peach. And so we had a raspberry red wine vinegar and we had a peach white wine vinegar. And we sold it like that for a good 4 years and had our ag break in there, and our profits were in, and everything was doing really, really well. And then by the time we could produce our first bottle, we were already ready to go and already approved from everybody else. And so it worked out really nicely. But yeah, 5 years usually for a good grapevine to become established. Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.